Welcome back. This is part two of my connection and talk with Claire Shackleford up in East Tennessee. We have been glad to get back together and talk. It's a difficult situation that we're dealing with, and as by the time this gets edited and posted, not only will the hurricane that hit the Carolinas and the Appalachia area, well, now the one in Florida is going through as we're recording. It's supposed to hit tonight there. So there may even be more things to talk about. What we want to pick up with where we left off in the first segment on just getting past that early, at the time of this recording, we're basically coming up on the second week of the destruction. It'll be 2 weeks on Friday. And one of the things I have observed over the years is that it seems like grief kind of goes in waves. And I had just said 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. So the next speed bump is coming for folks, and that'll be the third week. And as we're doing this to help caregivers primarily, although others can obviously get some help as they come along, it can be educational. Let's talk about this all of a sudden funny, funky feeling of frustration and like we're getting along and we're all in this together, and then all of a sudden, I know we label it certain words, but Claire, what do you make of that, and what can we suggest to the caregivers on the next step?
Yeah, I think some of that is, the universal anger, I think is what I usually call it, because it's not an anger directed at one thing exactly.
Yeah.
Some people do get angry with God. How could you let this happen? Everything I worked for is gone. And, I think a lot of people can relate to that. And sometimes people are angry with the government. Sometimes people are angry with their neighbor. Or sometimes people are angry at that cat. It's getting on my nerves. It's meowing. It's that fear. I really think a lot of it is rooted in fear. They're afraid everything's gone and nothing's coming back and nothing feels the same yet. And it's been 3 weeks and it's been 3 months. And where is everything? It was supposed to come back. And I think they're really coming to the realization the shock is wearing off. Yep. They're no longer numb. Shock does provide us with some numbness. And in that numbness, we find a little bit of hope. Suddenly, people are coming to our rescue. They love us. We realize we're part of America. These people are great. They're coming in from everywhere. And I love that about our country. I really do.
Yes.
I have a friend who's a missionary. They're also from there, but her husband was in Kathmandu during this hurricane here, and he barely made it home. Their floods and there was no issue with infrastructure because they don't have it. But he was literally treading like an ocean just to try to get home. And when he got home, he was so sick that, he couldn't celebrate his daughter's birthday for a few days. But it's different there than it is here. People run to the rescue here every time something like this happens. And so, there is that, we give each other that hope. Okay, we're part of something. No one's abandoning us. So that, we have shock and we have hope. And then after a while, even though those workers are still coming in, they're trickling in a little less often because people have to get back to work. And there's a little less they can do. We're having to work on the bigger things. And those things are working outward and in. So they don't see the bigger things being worked on. And, I think that they get fearful. And so I think that's where some of that anger comes from. I really do. I don't think that it's necessarily, I think some of it is frustration, but I think a lot of it's fear.
Yeah.
It's just my own
Oh
guess.
boy. That's a whole,
Yeah.
I really have been drawn to 2 Timothy 1 because I remember, we all memorize God has not given us a spirit of fear. And I thought, I don't remember that being the phobia fear. And sure enough, I went and looked, and it's a different word than root word of phobia. It's about dread. It's more like, so God has not given us a spirit, that's still pneuma, a spirit of dread, but the three biggies, power, dunamis, love,
Oh, yeah.
agape, and a sound mind. That's our
Right.
territory too. And so I think that's important for us to communicate to folks that are caregivers that
That's good.
when we're feeling dread or when we see the dread and as manifested in fear, that
Yeah.
we're able to provide uh and power is also, I guess I'm getting in the preaching. The
That's
power
okay.
is it's not necessarily it's ability. I mean,
Yeah.
if I've got a hot rod car, it's got a lot of power, run, run, run. It's just noise, but it has
Right.
the ability to get me somewhere fast.
Right.
So it's that kind of thing. And love, which we were just talking about, and that's what we're
Yes.
kind of
Right.
integrating in here.
So we have that the
So
ability to persevere, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. So my memories of in the tornado thing was very parallel to what you just said. The things, life went on, things tapered, and I think this may even be, Claire, I think this may even be magnified more in this situation because the focus for a week and a half has been on up there where you are, and now it's going to shift to Florida.
Yes.
And I used to hear saying in media, if it bleeds, it leads, the lead story. Well, now
Yeah.
it's over, and so all of a sudden these folks up there not only are going to that and that frustration could be magnified because the Operation Blessings got to go to Florida, and Samaritan's Purse has got to go to Florida, and a lot of these people are going to go shifting around.
Yeah.
Um, which puts it back on the caregiver. And
Yeah.
that's the next segment we wanted to look at in this talk, is what can we do maybe to help offset caregiver burnout, initial phases of that. What
Yeah.
could you mention on that for
Oh
us?
boy. Well, since you and I both are caregivers in that same type of regard to a degree, I know some of the things that I've learned over the past 30 some odd years has been just learning how to seek support for myself, making sure I have someone that I can talk to. I don't break confidentiality, but when I'm
Yeah.
feeling stressed, making sure I have someone I can just go talk with, and just talk about maybe like what's stressing me. Um, maybe being able to talk about in general, I'm stuck with this and I don't understand how to help this person. Can't tell you the specifics, can't even tell you if it's a man or a woman, although I don't normally counsel men unless I'm counseling a couple. I don't do that.
Right.
But I don't I don't pretend like I have all the answers, So sometimes I
Right.
do. I just need to go talk to somebody. Um, and it's really important to set up boundaries. That is so important. That means as much as you want to take your people home with you and give them sleeping bags to sleep in your living room, because I'm that kind of person. I would do it in a heartbeat. I can't. And it has taken me half my life to understand that. I have to have boundaries.
Amen.
And the biggest lie that a caregiver can believe is that the entire operation hinges on them. If they're going to be there and if they're going to act or if they're not. And it's not an ego thing. Again, it's that I think it's a codependency thing or whatever they call it. It's that, Alan, I'm going to go back to something you told me a long, long time ago.
Oh my goodness.
You came over to my house one time, you and a group of men from the church to put a new roof on. You were helping to put a new roof on our house. And out of gratitude, I made you all a big enchilada dinner. I don't know if everyone remembers. I
I
cook really
remember
good. Yeah.
I remember that
I cook
because I
really
didn't
good
eat
food.
enchiladas much. Great. Go ahead.
And I can't remember what it was, but I apologized for everything. And you said, I think you would apologize for the water being bad in Mexico. And that, and
Wow.
it made me laugh, but it made me think. And I thought, I think he's right.
Hmm.
And my husband, Brian, he teased me a lot when we first got married. He said, uh, I think you're a closet Catholic and you're not going to confession enough. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm a Protestant. He said, well, it's time for you to let go of some of this false guilt you've got going on here. And I thought, he's right, though. I've got to let go of this. I've got this false guilt I'm working out. So, know yourself. Know yourself, and know
Yes.
that you've got to let go of some of that. And it's not up to you to save the world. Instead, look at the immediate situation and say, what can I do? And if that's bringing that sweet little 73-year-old grandma a hot cup of coffee, then you've done something. And
Yep.
that is a good thing. You know, our good works don't get us into heaven. We know that. But that's a good thing right there. You go talk to her because you know what? That may be the most company she's had in 10 years.
Oh yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay. And that's caregiving. Sometimes we think it's not caregiving unless we're lifting up, you know, like Atlas there, lifting up the world, but it's not. That's not it at all.
Right.
Caregiving is looking at who's in your path, who's God given you to love today, and you love that person, and then looking for the next,
S-
right?
So, um, I was trying to find my whiteboard before we
Oh,
did this. I couldn't find it, so
ah,
I got a clipboard with paper. But
ah,
this is a little one of my rural clinics out in the middle of nowhere had I had a brick wall and I looked at over. And one day I saw, you know, the standard brick arrangement is a brick has six others that touch it.
oh,
And it's
yeah,
like the light went on, you know, it's like
yeah,
God said, point. And so, you know, when you're talking about supports and boundaries, you know, I can
perfect.
see, you know, and it's good. And so one of the things I do in an initial visit is tell me about, if I said, tell me about your support system, they're going to go, right.
Mhm.
But if I show them this, I say, okay, that's you. Who's this? Who's this? Who's it? And I'll label it, you know, and
Yeah,
it can go negative sometimes because if they've only got two bricks, then you know, well, but then I know I need to help them work on their, you know, their support system. But what you said is so good because, you know, if we can remind the caregiver that they're
yes,
not out there by themselves, who else has got your back? You know,
yes.
and I could go Band of Brothers, you know, the guys in the foxhole. It's not the theater, it's not the strategic, it's right here.
Right.
This is our battle, you know. And the
Uh-huh.
other thing, and the other thing is the boundary. I can identify that brick, there's a line, there's mortar.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so, I mean, I agree with so much what you're saying about that. Because burnout is real, you know, I don't have to tell you because you've seen it over the
Oh,
years in
yeah.
your systems that you've worked in, and maybe we've all kind of like, but I think
Oh,
I
yeah.
just in wrapping up this segment, the time flies when we're having fun here,
It
but
does.
it just goes so fast. And I want to keep these about 15 minutes so
Yeah.
people, you know, can absorb. Is there, just since we've been talking in this segment, is there any additional resource that may have popped into your mind that you can think of that you would want to recommend? If not, it's okay, but I just wanted to ask that before we go.
Well, my all-time favorite resource for any tragedy, of course, is Samaritan's Purse. I always send people to them because they're just so good at what they do, and
Yeah.
they're true blue. But another resource, and it's really kind of funny because I didn't realize that your son worked for them, is hospice. They do
Yes.
a lot of grief counseling, and they actually do go out into the community when there's issues like what's happened in Western North Carolina. I can guarantee you now that hospice has opened their doors for grief counseling. They don't only do that for people who have died in their facility. They often do that for the community when there's
Yeah.
a massive amount of grief and they know that there's limited resources. Or they will at least tell you these counselors in the community are offering grief counseling. But also contact your local churches. I'm
Yes.
sure there are pastors who are offering grief counseling right now. Um, I really think, you know, that the caregivers that are helping with these people, they know that a lot of these people are going to need some kind of grief counseling, and maybe there's
Yeah.
some churches that are offering even group counseling that will help these folks get through. But they're going to need long term and long haul support, and you
Yeah.
know that's what's going to help them get through.
Yes. And I really do think something else you said that it's sort of like you know, our worldview is very, 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 very similar. I just think reality based approaches are the way we need to be looking at things. And one
Absolutely.
of the realities is I just heard my neighbor, and I don't know if it's coming across the sound here. Uh, just started up the mower next door. A year and a half ago, a tornado came right down our street in March of 23 and dropped a tree right in the top of her roof. And they just finished the final repair on the house. In fact,
Oh,
the pods thing that she had in her front yard just got towed away. They just unloaded. How many months? I don't even know. 16 months. So there's something about the reality of knowing that there is time and it's okay. It's
yeah.
really okay. It's going to take time. We don't have to do everything at once. And what you just said, I guess, triggered that because it's going to be it's going to be some time involved, which is why hopefully you and I will be able to get back together and we'll assess kind of what we've done and how things are developing. And we'll hopefully, if our schedules allow it, we'll come back and do a couple more clips and glean from what's going on around us and in our world. So
Yep.
again, thank you so much. And I hate to go, but you got to get a bite before you go back on the clock, and me too. So
All
uh,
right.
it is so good. Thanks so much for joining me, Claire. And uh, I've been, I hope your daughter's enjoying her music because she sure does look like it on Facebook.
Oh, she loves it. Yeah, she's a joy.
All right.
It was nice seeing you, and thank you for having me.
All right.